There is a strange generation sitting in the middle of modern money. Not old enough to be called boomers, not young enough to be called millennials, not loud enough to be studied every week. Generation X, born between the mid-1960s and around 1980. They are the people who can have money in the bank, but still act like one disaster is waiting outside the door. They can drive an old car for 15 years, then suddenly spend hundreds on a concert. They can hate credit card debt, but take a huge mortgage without blinking. They can use online banking, but still keep paper files in a drawer like evidence in a crime case. At first, it looks confusing, maybe even contradictory, but the mystery has a pattern. Gen X does not treat money like comfort. They treat money like protection. And to understand why, we have to go back to a promise. The old promise: work hard, stay loyal, buy a house, save slowly, retire safely. That was the map many of them saw as children. A parent had one job for years. A paycheck arrived on schedule. The bank felt serious. The mortgage had an ending date. A pension sounded like a locked door between you and poverty. The system looked boring, but boring was the point. Boring meant safe. Then Gen X grew up. And something strange happened. The map started changing while they were still walking on it. Factories closed. Companies downsized. Middle managers disappeared. People who gave 20 years to one employer were handed boxes for their desk. The message was cold. Loyalty was not a shield. Experience was not a guarantee. A company could call you family on Monday and cut your badge on Friday. That was the first crack. Then came the deeper wound. The market crashed. Home values fell. Retirement accounts shrank. The house that was supposed to be security suddenly looked like a trap with a front door. For Gen X, 2008 was not just a financial crisis. It was a confession. The system finally admitted what they had suspected for years. The rules could change. The promise could break. And nobody would come to explain it gently. This is why Gen X saves in such a strange way. They do not save because they feel peaceful. They save because they hear footsteps. Their emergency fund is not just money. It is a locked room. Their retirement account is not just a plan. It is a bunker with a password. They may invest every month and still not believe the ending will be fine. That sounds irrational until you realize something. Gen X does not prepare for the average future. They prepare for the ambush. This is also why their side hustles feel different. For younger people, a side hustle may look like freedom. For Gen X, it often looks like an escape tunnel. Consulting on weekends, selling online, a rental property, a small business, a freelance client, a skill nobody at work controls. They are not always chasing a dream. Sometimes they are building a second exit because they remember what happened to people who only had one door. A job is income, but a backup income is oxygen. And once you have watched grown adults lose everything after trusting one company, oxygen matters. Then there is their strange loyalty. Gen X may leave a job without romance, but they will keep buying the same jeans, the same coffee, the same tools, the same old brand from their youth. Why? Because institutions became suspicious, but familiar things felt honest. A corporation can restructure your life with one email. A trusted product simply does what it said it would do. That old jacket did not betray them. That neighborhood restaurant did not collapse their retirement. That band from the 1990s did not promise a pension and then vanish. So their loyalty moved, not toward offices, toward objects, toward rituals, toward people who remembered their order. This is why Gen X spending can look mysterious too. They can be careful with groceries, but generous with memories. They can delay buying a new sofa, but pay for travel. They can calculate bills quietly, then buy concert tickets like time itself is on sale. That is not random. It is a philosophy. Stuff can break. Cars lose value. Houses can fall underwater. Possessions can become clutter inside a collapsing economy. But a memory cannot be repossessed. Nobody can foreclose on the night you saw your favorite band. Nobody can send a collections notice to a road trip. Nobody can crash the market value of a birthday dinner with your children. To Gen X, experiences are not always luxury. Sometimes they are the only wealth that cannot be taken back. Their relationship with financial advice is another clue. They want knowledge, but they do not fully want a guru. They read, they compare, they build spreadsheets, they watch videos, they check calculators, they ask questions, then verify the answer. This is not arrogance. It is scar tissue. They saw experts miss danger. They saw adults trust plans that quietly dissolved. So now Gen X wants the steering wheel close enough to grab. Even when they hire help, a part of them stays awake in the back seat. Debt shows the same psychology. They do not hate all borrowing. They hate debt that has no map. A mortgage can make sense because it has structure. A business loan can feel acceptable if it buys an asset. A car payment can be tolerated when the use is clear. But credit card debt feels different. It feels slippery. It grows in the dark. It turns small decisions into a fog. Gen X knows the danger of debt without an exit sign. So their real rule is not never borrow. Their rule is darker. Never owe money to something you cannot control. And then there are the paper records. This is where younger people laugh. Why keep old statements? Why print documents? Why save files in folders? Why use a fireproof box like a detective protecting secret evidence? Because Gen X remembers that systems fail. Databases lose things. Companies merge. Passwords disappear. Websites redesign. Customer service says, we cannot find that record. Paper does not need Wi-Fi. Paper does not ask for a code. Paper sits quietly until the day it becomes proof. That is not old-fashioned. That is redundancy. A backup for a world that keeps pretending it never makes mistakes. So what is the hidden truth? Gen X is not broken. Gen X is translated. Every habit is a sentence from an earlier shock. The old car says, do not waste safety. The side job says, do not trust one paycheck. The savings account says, something may happen. The concert ticket says, live before the system steals the mood. The spreadsheet says, check the numbers yourself. The paper file says, keep proof. And the mortgage rule says, only enter debt when you know the way out. That is why this generation is so interesting. They are not optimistic like the old world wanted them to be. They are not fully cynical either. They still work. They still save. They still invest. They still show up. But they do it with one eye open. Because deep down, Gen X learned a lesson many people only learn after the damage. Money is not just math. Money is memory. Money is fear. Money is evidence. Money is a survival system built from every moment the world changed the rules. And maybe that is why Gen X treats money so differently. They are not trying to look rich. They are trying not to be trapped. They are not chasing luxury. They are chasing control. They are not afraid of money. They are afraid of needing help from a system that may not answer. So the next time you see someone with a strong savings account, an old car, a secret side income, a paper folder, and tickets to a concert they refuse to miss, maybe do not call it strange. Maybe call it what it is, a financial survival code, written by a generation that watched the promise break and decided never to stand too close to the edge again.